Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Stattendor, with me, James David. So, in this episode, I thought I would talk about the importance of the first and major character first featured in the Tales of Stattendor comic book series, and that of course would be the wandering wizard, Zeist the Green. The reason why I want to talk about him is because I want to talk about the creative process of how I came up with him, and where the idea for the character came from, as well as his relevance to the ongoing series, without giving too much of his background away. So sit back and relax as I tell you a tale or two. As a child, I grew up listening to the mythical adventures of King Arthur, the once and future king of all of Britannia, depending on which legend you listen to, of course. This wise and mighty king was advised by the great and powerful wizard Merlin, and not to mention across other fantasy stories, mythologies, cultures, and sagas, there always seems to be a wise old wizard who seems to give advice or guide the protagonist to their intended goal. When it came time to formulate my own characters for the world of Stattendor, I realised that I would need a leading character to help set the mould, not just for the story, but for the tone of the world itself. I really thought about this for a really long time. I had a number of other characters in mind. I decided on a few different ones. I even changed the original storyline, but then I decided that instead of starting at the beginning of a story with new characters establishing themselves, I thought about using established characters, but in a certain time in their life where they were going through their quote-unquote wilderness years. I first heard this term being used to describe the years in which Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during the Second World War, did between the years of 1929 to 1939. Because of this decade out of public and political life, Winston Churchill used that time to write a series of autobiographies about his ancestor, as well as study history. So because of this, the term wilderness years is often used to describe a period of someone's life, whether they be a politician or a celebrity, where that person doesn't really hold any authority or the same level of stardom as they once did, but then returns to the public eye after a while. Hence they refer to this time period as their wilderness years. Because of this, I decided that if Zeist were to be introduced into the comic book series, he wouldn't be a fresh-faced young apprentice eager to explore the world. No, he would be somebody who, while seasoned and somewhat experienced with matters of adventuring and danger, he wouldn't be this wise and all-powerful, all-knowing wizard. I didn't want him to be a Gandalf-esque figure who knows everything there is to know. My original plan for Zeist was to have him be introduced as more of a tragic hero, a deposed figure of something. Originally I had intended him to be a king, but then I thought, no, that's a bit too typical. I wanted it to be something else. I wanted it to be more personal to him. He was an adventurer. He is established as a figure of importance, or importance in the past, per se. He was a major player, but there was something that happened to him, a personal tragedy which caused him to retreat from the public eye for over a decade or so. Because of this, at the beginning of Tales of Stattendor issue number 1, we see Zeist receive a letter from a mysterious stranger offering him information in exchange for a meeting. Now what this information could or would be is yet to be seen, but what is known is that Zeist is very determined to learn what this could be about. So he travels all this way to meet this stranger, and I won't spoil it for anybody who wants to read issue number 1, but it sets into motion a series of events that brings Zeist out from the wilderness and back into the world of adventure. Another important decision I made about Zeist was he wasn't just going to be called Zeist. I originally thought he would just be known as Zeist, but I wanted to add another layer of mystery to him. So I decided to copy the legendary Gandalf in this regard, and I associated his title with the green. So I thought, okay, he wears green robes, but why does he wear green robes? So for me, as an author and as a person, my favourite colour is green. I kind of like that grassy green you see during the summer in all the fields, and I like that. I like that sort of sight. And to me, I think of like nature, and when I see large fields or meadows of grassy green, I just think, oh, adventure. What's on the other side? What could be beyond those fields? And because of that, I decided to make him Zeist the Green. His staff, however, was harder for me to think of, because originally I thought he wouldn't have a staff and he'd just do magic with his hands, but I didn't like that, and I didn't like the idea of him having a quarterstaff, so I thought, no, I'm going to give him like a proper wizard staff. And I didn't want it to be like a typical wooden brown one, and instead he has like a petrified white staff with a little sapphire in the top of it. And I thought, yeah, that looks really cool to me. And trying to describe it was really hard at first, because originally I imagined him having like a typical greyish brown staff. When I first made Zeist, it was actually years and years and years ago when I first started playing Battle for Middle-earth 2, I made like my wizard character, because you had like a section where you could create your own hero. I made like a proto-Zeist in that game, and I used him to fight the armies of Mordor. And actually, ironically, had him fight alongside one of the characters that inspired him. So I really liked that, and it was really cool. So when I thought, okay, I'm going to make a comic book series about 15 or so years after I made him, I was like, yeah, I'm going to make Zeist in this comic series as the main character. So I'm grateful that they did Battle for Middle-earth 2. So years after playing Battle for Middle-earth 2 and creating Zeist, I made him his own character within the world of Stattendor. And I hope he does become a great figure in the eyes of the readers and the people who follow the series, because even if after a while we might jump to another group of heroes, I think Zeist will still always be a character people associate Tales of Stattendor with. So even a storyline or two into the comics, people always want to know what's happening with Zeist, where he's going. I mean, at least I hope so, because to me he's like one of the flagship characters of the series. And he may make the surprise cameo now and again before he has his next major storyline, but for the moment I'm content with just trying to get through the first big storyline of the series, and I'm excited to see what you all think of him. What do you think of Zeist so far, by the way? Anybody who's read the comics or read my essay I wrote on Patreon called Portrait of a Green Wizard, where I go into further detail about how I created Zeist originally, all those years ago in that game. And I'm curious to know what you think he will be like, or what you expect him to do as the series progresses. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what the future holds for him and all the other characters in the world of Stattendor. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode of Tales of Stattendor.